Two parents, a mom and a dad, their children, and sick allegations of physical and sexual abuse, some involving a dog cage. I'm Angenette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. You know, one of the reasons that we can bring this really disturbing case to you is because we have a great partner. It's Morgan & Morgan. For more than 35 years, they've been fighting for the people and have recovered more than $30 billion for their clients. Yes, you heard that right. The proof is in the company's track record, with more than 1,000 lawyers across 100 offices nationwide. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is like hiring an army to go into battle for you, a team that will fight hard to get their clients the compensation they deserve. Not all law firms are the same. Hire the wrong one and you may be beat before you even start. So if you are ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan, and their fee is free unless you win. For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/crimefix, click the link below, or scan the QR code that you see right there on your screen. Imagine you are a child and you've never gone to school. You can't write, you can't read, and neither can your 5 siblings, and you have health problems. Prosecutors in North Carolina say a 15-year-old and their 5 siblings were found living in horrific conditions, and now their parents are in jail. Their father is accused of raping one of the children over a number of years. Sheriff's deputies say Rachelleigh Galasso and Lacy Hocutt are the parents of 6 children, and they were arrested back on April 1st. The investigation into their parenting of the children actually started back in February. During their initial court appearances, the prosecutor called this one of the worst cases of child neglect and abuse that law enforcement had seen. Here's just a sample of that hearing from WRAL-TV.
The sheriff's office went out to the residence where these children had been living, and it was so filthy that the investigating officers had to wear protective gear and bodysuits when they went inside the house.
The prosecutor said during Galasso and Hocutt's first court appearance that a 13-year-old boy was kept in a dog cage and was covered in feces and was underweight when he was found. The prosecutor said in court that the boy actually rocks back and forth and says, "You're never getting out. You're never getting out." And so they assume that is what the parents told the boy. The Charlotte News and Observer obtained an arrest warrant for Rachelleigh Galasso. The website reported that the dental care for 2 of the children was so bad that they had to have adult teeth pulled, and they cannot chew without pain. The News and Observer reported that a teenage daughter's scoliosis was so neglected that it's beyond the point where the child can be treated with surgical intervention, and she will have to suffer from the condition for the rest of her life. So prosecutors say the children have never been to school and that they have serious medical problems. Now, I mentioned earlier that the father of the children, Lacy Hocutt, faces 3 counts of statutory rape of a child younger than 15, along with 6 counts of statutory rape of a child by an adult. Those counts involve a child who was between the ages of 7 and 12, and the warrant says that Hocutt was between the age of 25 and 31 at the time that this sexual abuse took place. But Lacy Hocutt has also been charged in the past with harming Rachelleigh Galasso. In November of 2025, Lacy Hocutt Jr. was charged with assault of a female, misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, injury to personal property, and communicating threats. The warrant in that case states the assault was a push and shove and inflicted injuries to both hands by grabbing and squeezing. It goes on to state using force to shove and grab her hands and threatening to shoot her if she called police. And at the time, the defendant was a person who shared a child in common with the victim. That's the domestic violence charge. The warrant for Lacy Hocutt's arrest also says that he damaged Rachelleigh's tablet and cell phone in this instance and placed phone calls to her and threatened her, saying, as I mentioned, "I will shoot you if you call the police." So as Rachelleigh Galasso faces charges related to the alleged abuse and neglect of her children, her mom is defending her on Facebook. Gina Maria Palmero wrote, "I'm really sick and tired of my daughter being thrown through the mud all over the media. The accusations are ridiculous. My daughter went to court a few days ago, and the charges about her son weren't on her paperwork. The charges of the scoliosis and the dental stuff could easily be fixed. I am so sick of this S word. I got pictures of my grandchildren, recent ones, happy, smiling, goofing off. My granddaughter getting her nose pierced and smiling. Her going to a school event in a spaghetti strap dress, her whole back exposed. Did anyone have anything to say? The school is legally required to report any abuse. There was no suspicions, obviously, because no reports were ever made. Them claiming that my grandson was dog crated, then why didn't they arrest her the first day or take those children the first day? Because after that, they were in a motel for a week supervised by that social worker who was discriminated against her. And there were plenty of people that witnessed those kids in a victim's abuse center. So if any of them thought those children were neglected or mistreated, they would have reported it. There was a social worker there every day from dusk to dawn, pretty much. Then when they went with the search warrant, they're claiming that he was in a dog crate, but yet he was in the care of DSS. So how is that possible? How is it physically possible for a kid who wasn't in her custody to be in the dog cage? Seriously, my grandson is autistic, severely disabled, and the only thing he's ever known is his mother. And they are claiming because he wants to get out. He wants to get out of where he's at. They're claiming that's because he was in a cage. A disabled child who barely speaks, they seem to think they know what he's saying in his brain. This child, if you knew him, has the mentality of a 4-year-old, wears diapers, and that's because he's disabled. Yes, he's skinny. I won't say he isn't, but he has a nutritional issue that he's had since he was a baby, that the doctors were aware of, that tried to put weight on him, but it's difficult for him. He had club feet at birth, so it started to affect him recently, and my daughter was going to take care of it as soon as she found a new place. I mean, she was trying to get out of this situation. So that is what Rachelleigh Galasso's mother is saying on Facebook. She's disputing the allegations being made by sheriff's deputies and prosecutors. So I want to bring in Kristen Halkiotis. She is a former prosecutor, currently a defense attorney in North Carolina. So she knows the law down there very well. Kristen, the allegations in this case are absolutely horrific, absolutely horrific. We have grandma here defending her daughter, Rachelleigh Galasso, fervently, basically saying, there were things here she was going to take care of. Probably not a big surprise to you to see mom coming out and defending her daughter and her parenting skills.
That's true. And good morning, Angenette. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm not surprised at all. Generally, in situations like this, you will see family members try to circle the wagons, close ranks, try to defend their family member. So that part isn't surprising me too much right now.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me, if you would, a little bit about the severity of these allegations. What the prosecutors laid out in court sounded really horrific. I mean, children who've never been to school, this is what the claim is. They can't read, they can't write. Some of the kids had adult teeth pulled out. They're in pain when they eat. A 13-year-old boy kept in a dog cage, covered in feces, rocking back and forth. I mean, these are some really horrific allegations of neglect and abuse.
Incredibly terrible allegations. And when you look at the warrants to actually see what they're charged with, the father is charged with multiple counts of statutory child rape. And the maximum sentence that he's looking at, maximum potential punishment for those charges for each one, is life without the possibility of parole. With respect to the mom, she's looking at multiple counts of child abuse, some different levels of child abuse. She's got a few counts of our Class E felony child abuse, a few counts of the Class G felony child abuse. Each Class E carries with it the potential of 88 months, up to 88 months in prison. Each Class G carries with it up to a potential of up to 47 months in prison. There are ways where the state could actually increase those charges if it turns out that injuries were more severe. There are higher level child abuse charges that are also available if things shake out that way. So she's looking at a fair amount of time as well.
They're both being held without bail right now. For Lacy Hocutt, the father, who's charged with these horrific sex crimes involving at least one of the girls, I'm not shocked that he's being held without bail. Are you surprised, though, that Rachelleigh is being held without bail? Obviously, these are very serious charges, but I was expecting to see her, even though they're awful, that the allegations here are awful, I was expecting her to possibly get bail.
And, Angenette, that's a great question. Honestly, I'm not surprised at all. Given the public outcry so far about this case, given the fact that it has been so widely reported in the press, people are incredibly upset about it, and rightfully so. These are horrific allegations. No one wants to be the judge that puts a bond on a defendant, and then the defendant, leaves the jurisdiction and runs away. I could imagine she is potentially a flight risk, or at least that's the argument the state made, right? That
Right.
she's a flight risk, she's a danger to the community, all of the above. And certainly at this point in time, no judge is going to, especially given how new the allegations are, right? No judge is going to want to put their name on giving her a bond at this point in time. And I should note, the law in North Carolina just recently changed as of last October with Irina's law that allows for no bond with a bunch of high-level felonies. Used to be in North Carolina before that, you could only put no bond holds on people charged with first-degree murder or certain probation violations if they were already, if they got recharged with something else.
Interesting. One of the things that is so surprising to me about this case, and maybe it shouldn't be given the allegation here, is that these children can't read and write, which is shocking to me, but we do hear about these cases. It's really sad. But that this apparently was going on for so long, and that we're now just finding out about it, or that law enforcement is just now finding out about it. On social media, I see this guy with children, and of course nobody puts really awful photos on social media of them looking like a bad parent. But if this was so bad, usually the schools are the first line of defense, and grandma is saying that at least one of the girls was going to some type of school function or whatever. So she's kind of disputing whether or not at least one of them was in school. But and we maybe we'll learn more about that as time goes on. But typically the schools are the first line of defense, and they would report if they suspected something was going on, or if the kids were in a dangerous situation, because they're mandatory reporters. What is your thought on that? And how does somebody have so many kids for so long and not have them in school? It's like they're not ghosts.
Sure. And so in North Carolina, the law requires that children between the ages of 7 and 16, they are mandated and are required to attend school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the 15-year-old actually was going to school, maybe that's how the CPS report originated. We don't know at this point in time, but that's a likely possibility for sure. If a child had previously gone to school and then was being held out of school, there are flags in the system for sure that would trigger an investigation or an inquiry about, hey, this kid hasn't been in school in a long time. What's going on? Do we need to contact the authorities? But if someone was never actually enrolled in school, then there would be no flag in the system, because the system wouldn't be aware of that. And so if you have people, a lot of times abusers will withhold children from school, or they might homeschool, for example. When I was a child abuse prosecutor, homeschool was always a red flag. Because these are people who are keeping their children outside of the system, if you will, and away from those sort of checks and that first line of defense.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. What's really concerning, well, the whole thing is concerning. I mean, we've got talk about kids with no dental care and having adult teeth taken out, and they can't eat. When they're eating, they're in pain, according to what the prosecutor was saying. But we've got this 13-year-old boy that the prosecutor said is, kept in a dog cage and is covered in feces. Grandma says on social media that he's autistic and wears diapers. And he's always had these nutritional issues. But I mean, I don't care. I don't care what the issue is. You don't put a kid in a dog cage and have them sitting in there covered in feces. I mean, good God. I mean, an autistic child rocking back and forth saying, You're never getting out of there. You're never getting out of there. This is what the prosecutor said. I'm just thinking to myself, House of Horrors is what this sounds like. So, I mean, God, as a prosecutor, what do you do with this case? I mean, do you deal on this case? Do you just take it to trial? What do you do?
Well, I think first you make sure that you have the complete investigation, whether there are any school records. You want to look at all the school records. You do want to look at any medical records that exist, right? If for example, the 13-year-old does have some sort of developmental delays and issues, you want to get those medical records, talk to whoever you need to talk to. Is this a witness who's going to be able to testify? Because there's all sorts of evidentiary considerations too, of course. But you're going to want to make sure that law enforcement's investigation was completely thorough. And then you are going to want to sit down and meet with the kids and talk to them. And you're evaluating evidence, meaning you're evaluating the strength of your witnesses. You're going to see what their state of mind is like, whether they're willing to testify, whether they're able to testify. Those are all considerations that go into preparing a case and making that decision about what, if anything, are we going to offer in terms of a plea arrangement.
Another thing that I found interesting about this case, Kristen, is the fact that Lacy Hocutt, this is interesting yet very sad, was charged late last year with misdemeanor domestic violence and making threats to Rachelleigh Galasso, and to telling her, if you call the police, I'll shoot you, and things of that nature. So it appears that the police at some point, or sheriff's office, believe that she is a victim of domestic violence at his hands. So does that factor into this case potentially as well when looking at Rachelleigh?
Sure, it definitely does. And this is a classic reason why co-defendants have to have different defense attorneys, because they have different interests. And certainly if I were representing Ms. Galasso, one thing I would be exploring would be, is she a co-defendant or is she actually another victim of his? What restraints did she have? Not necessarily literal, but maybe figurative. Like, was she, was there violence being committed against her as well? Because these court documents seem to tell that story, that he has been abusing her. And so definitely that's a potential defense line for her.
Wow. What's really just awful, though, the whole thing is terrible, all of these allegations, but the allegations of statutory rape involving what appears to be one of these children, maybe it's more than one, but it seems like it went on for a long time, according to what the court documents say. Lacy Hocutt is accused of raping one of the children, who it appears could be his daughter. Or at least stepdaughter. Wait, the exact relationship isn't clear, but she's a family member. Awful. I mean, just really horrific and awful. So, the hope is that she's getting the care that she needs, both emotionally, physically, etc.
There is a lot that goes into that. Again, for victims to start that healing process, you hope that she's got access at this point to some good therapy. And that's certainly another thing the prosecutor has to take into account when the prosecutor is determining how this case is going to be resolved and whether or not a plea offer will be made. Is this a witness who's going to want to testify, or is that going to be further traumatizing to her? So those are all of these things are so interwoven and interconnected when they're dealing with this case.
So what's the next step in this case? Because they've had their initial appearance where the judge says, okay, I feel pretty comfortable setting no bond in this case. What's the next step? Because they're back in court later in April.
And that may be very well just a placeholder court date, because at yesterday's setting, they were appointed public defenders. And so now their lawyers are having a chance to meet them, get up to speed with the evidence thus far. Their attorneys, I will say, are not going to have access to everything from the very beginning, because in North Carolina, discovery rules don't attach until a case is indicted by the grand jury into Superior Court. And right now, the case is still in district court, which is where all felonies start, or all cases in general, even felonies. And so it won't be until the case gets indicted that the defense attorneys are going to have full, unfettered access to all of the evidence that the state has. But for right now, they're going to be talking to their new clients, getting statements from them, meeting with them, having their investigators start working on the case as well, and trying to start piecing together what things are going to look like down the road.
Well, it's, the allegations here are horrific. Obviously, that they are innocent until proven guilty, as all criminal defendants are, but the allegations are just awful. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Angenette. Thank you so much.
So right now, Rachelleigh Galasso and Lacy Hocutt Jr. are being held without bail on the charges that they face. They will be back in court in April this month. So we'll keep an eye on it for you and let you know what happens. That's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. We'll see you back here next time.